like to have a show of hands how many people have used Basemap before. What? Have you used the application? Can you hear me in the back? Yes. Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. Great. So you know what you're here for. Yeah. Great. Okay, so I'm Jessica White, so everyone that doesn't know, I work at Maps and Records, along with Wilson, Lee, and Coachman, and who leads all for content applications. And also, there will be a PDF of the PowerPoint and an audio recording available on the Tech Talk website afterwards. All right, so to start off with, what is Basemap and why do we want to use it? So Basemap is an interactive mapping application which currently has about 175 data layers that's changing all the time. One of the great things about Basemap is that it ties into a lot of our other systems, such as our BIM page, which gives you additional information on buildings, as well as the online archive. So just to kind of give you an idea of the data sets that we have within the application, I've listed them here, such as building information and floor plans, aerial imagery, utility information throughout the campus, as well as construction projects. All right, so in this session we have about an hour, and we're going to talk about navigating the Basemap, which data layers are available, and how to add them to the map view, how to search and report throughout these different data layers, how to use buffering and measuring, how to use redlining, which is essentially drawing on the map and creating your own data layers, and then printing and emailing the map that you created. So with that short introduction, we'll go right into it now. So the Basemap can be found at basemap.stanford.edu, and if you're on a Stanford computer, you can just type in Basemap and enter, and it'll take you right there. Another good thing to note is that the application is CNET ID protected, as well as the data layers. And those are based on security based on your credentials. So some people will see the utility layers while others won't, for example. All right, so to do a quick overview, what we're looking at here on the left is going to be all of the tools, the functionality tools that we have available, such as the searching and redlining, as well as the buffer and measure tools. Here we have other navigation tools, traffic, directions, and street view. That's going to take you directly to the Google page. So it'll open up a whole new tab and give you directions or street view anywhere on campus, as well as traffic. The FAQs, this is a page showing you the frequently asked questions on how to use Basemap. So you can always find that here. If your question is not here, please feel free to call either myself or anyone at Maps and Records at any time for help. The share button is one way of sharing your information which we will touch base on in a moment. And then the data index, this is going to show you those 175 data layers that I mentioned earlier. And we can search through here to see what we have available. For example, if you're interested in parking data, and it'll bring up everything that itself. Another thing to note here is that if you're looking for data layers, for example, and you don't see it, you'll see here that we have a data layer called buildings maintenance level. Mine is grayed out and italicized. That means that I do not have access to that data. But if I thought that I should have access to it, that was an error, I could contact those George Vanderbilt and help me out with that. That also has the update frequency, so how often a data is updated, as well as the security description. All right. Now, having seen those 175 data layers, also very quickly, I'm sorry, before I get there, I mean, there's an additional tool over here, which is printing, how to zoom around and kind of pan map. Take your handle here and pan around. Also, this one here is probably the most useful. It has a magnifying glass at the bottom. And click on that, you can actually just zoom to the area that you're most interested in. And you'll notice that as you get further into the map, more detail becomes available. And that's just because if you were to display all this data and it's zoomed out, which is zoomed over. So to add more data to your map, you go to the More Data tab right next to the Map tab. And this is where we have access to all of the 175 data. So you'll see here that they're all organized into different folders. There's a couple of different ways of accessing the information. You can click through the folders to see what we have available. Just to give you a quick overview of what that is, we have aerial photography from 2001 to 2010, which is always interesting if you want to look at the different data sets to see how the campus has changed throughout the years. We also have different boundary layers, such as the construction boundary, the archive grid, the pedestrian zone, and the SETI mapping data. We have building themes, so buildings by quad and by zone, all the civil layers. We also have DOC, disability access, permitting, so things such as the academic growth boundary and the tiger salamander boundaries, and some trails. We have a lot of grounds information, such as the trees, the tree grids, irrigation, hydrology information, as well as any outdoor element that we have outside. We have that mapped for the most part, such as the benches, ash urns, birds, festocs, you name it. And then we also have safety, so AEDs, emergency assembly points, knock boxes, services. This includes my favorite data layer, the eateries layer, topography, and transportation, which has things like bike racks, parking permits, and also all of the geoscipic utilities throughout campus. So happy to mention that we do have a ton of data here. Me personally, I have a hard time remembering where everything's filed. What I like to do is I'll just come up here and start typing in, for example, aerials, and it'll bring up everything related to that. If I was looking for construction, you can just start typing that out, and it'll bring you everything that this finds us. So for the purpose of our demo today, we're going to do buildings by quad. And you'll notice that as I'm clicking these on, what this is doing is this is taking that box and adding it to the box on the left. I like to think of that as my shopping cart. So after I have everything in there that I want, I'll click apply. And we'll add the big one. Always good to know what this is. Once you have everything you're interested in, you can go ahead and click apply. That will add it to your map. What I'm going to do here is zoom out a bit so you can see all of the data that we've added. You'll notice that we're looking at a lot of data here, but it's not entirely clear what it is that we're looking at. So one way to tell what we're looking at is to click the select tool, which looks like a mouse icon. And then we're going to go to the legend here, and we're just going to open up the click boxes to expand and see what exactly it is that we're looking at. And this is also where you can turn the data on and off, so you can see the data layers. So for example, here we can see that the building color coding reflects what quad it's under. But the orange corresponds to quad 4, etc. And if we want to, from here, we can go ahead and turn this off and show my construction project to get an idea of where those are and what different departments those fall under. And then you can see that the eateries icon is there along with those labels. So that's adding data to your map. And if you know that you're going to be going through some specific data sets. Like for example, if you're most interested in construction, you can come here, you can click on the layer preset, and what that's going to do is that's going to take that time of finding that data for you and just apply the construction related data set. Okay, so that's searching. So for selecting, so we have this data on the map, and now we might be interested in getting additional information besides just the visual information. And we can do that by selecting. There's a couple of different ways of doing that. So the easiest would be to go back up to that selection tool, which again looks like the mouse cursor, and then to go and click on the data point. What that's going to do is open up the reporting window on the phone. And you can click on one, or you can do a shift click and click on multiple. And then you'll see that what that does is that pulls up the project name, project department, construction start date and end date, and the project manager. And so, and all of these are sortable, so you can absolutely do that. Also, you can select many different types of data. So in addition to being able to click on multiple features, you can also drag and drop. What that's going to do is bring up a number of different feature types. So we have the construction, and now we have the buildings that we selected. And so from here, this is the great tie-in into BIMs and floor plans, which you can get to right from the system. So looking at different buildings here, you can sort them by building ID or by building name. And if you're interested in Cypress Hall, for example, you can click on the building ID and have all of the BIM associated information for them. Also, you can go ahead and view the floor plans directly from here as well. And then if you're interested in taking this list back to your desk for another purpose, you can also export it to Excel from here, and that'll save it onto your computer. So for the question is if the map will also save. For this, it's going to be the Excel spreadsheet. But we do have a way of saving the map as well. So after you've gotten this, a lot of times I'll hear users say, I have a hard time getting back to the map. You know, I can't see the map now because the reporting window is in the way. And the way that you want to get rid of that is there's a little button right in the middle called close. And if you do that, it'll pop it back down. You can also pop it back open at any time. So the question is if there's a way of closing the other boxes on the left, and unfortunately there's not. You can, however, now that I said that, I hope it's correct. Yes, you can minimize it, make it a bit smaller. And I think that what we're seeing here might just be also the resolution for the projector.
Well, I think George, we talked about one way over there. No, those two big rectangles, kind of like to hold it down.
You can make it a bit smaller, but. So that's selecting the data based on the feature that you know you're interested in. But to actually search to get to that report, there's also another way of doing that. So say that that a user has, for example, a work order to put a new light bulb in the Jordan wall, for example. And they can go into the building layer and say building name. For example, if they just know it's Jordan, and that will pull up all buildings that have Jordan within the building name. And there's a number of other features you could search on, such as building IDs and address. And then when you see the pull down, it'll show you what different data layers you have that you can do the search on. So for example, with this map view, I can also do one on the construction project as well. take you to that project and actually zoom in so that you can see it as well. That is searching and reporting. So say that you're, for example, a project manager, and that you know you have to do scaffolding on this building, let's say for maybe 20 feet out, and you want to know how that's going to work. One way of doing that would be to use the buffer tool. So if you go back on your tools on the left-hand side, click buffer. Now that we have this selected, you can tell that I want to do, for example, let's say 20 feet. Around the selected area. And that will show you what 20 feet around the construction project site looks like. So the reason it mentions roof upgrade is because what we're looking at here, I'll just turn the buffer off very quickly, is this is the, exactly, that's the construction project, and so all of the different construction projects are right there, along with the project. And so if Greg Finale wanted to, for example, tell his contractors to park nearby and walk over, one way he might be able to gauge how far they're walking, for example, might be a bad example, so not finding immediate parking. That would be the measuring tool. And so from here, he can quickly measure. For example. You know, the measure tool is actually telling you on the left, and the length of that line segment as well as its own length, which is about a thousand. Also, before we get too much further, I do want to also mention the archive grid. The archive grid is another system that the Basemap pays into, which shows you all of the as-built that Maps and Records has received for a given quality. So, so with this data layer here, you'll notice that if you hover within any particular grid, a pop-up comes up, giving you a website. If you hit Control and you click on that, it'll open up an additional data tab that will show you all of the as-built for that particular grid. It's just one of the systems that the Basemap pays into.
Construction map, is there a way to put on certain set of projects, like, I want to look at the CCM project, and mailbox or something,
So the question is if you can click in the legend box to show one particular data set or grouping, and the answer is unfortunately no. That is a great suggestion. At this time, that would be a great time. The construction boundary, things you can search on would be project name, project number, construction start and end date, and project manager. One thing you could do, one quick workaround over here, is if you zoomed out, you could turn off, for example, all of the other data layers, which would show you just the construction, which might help you kind of find it. Alright, so with that, I also wanted to show you redlining, and this is one of my favorite parts of Basemap. So redlining, how I like to describe it, is kind of like coloring the brush. You can actually draw your own data onto the map itself. And so with the redlining, you can have as many redlining layers as you want. So if you're a construction or a project manager, you can have a different redline for every construction project, or you can have one redline for multiple projects. You're not limited to how many you can have, and they stay within the base map under your SIMET ID for whenever you come out of the data. So you can choose your colors, you can choose your transparency, the line fill. You can get really creative with this one. This is one that I had previously, and you'll see that when I opened it, it actually redrew that polygon that I had earlier. We're going to go ahead and the different features you can add within a mapping system are always point lines and polygons. And you can add any one of those within here. So for this plot of line, then doing something very creative, we'll name it line. And you just go into the base map, drag and drop. So from this, you could say, for example, you were interested in, let's say, a polygon. So we'll call this project line. So you're interested in, perhaps creating a new construction project. What is there? We wanted to add something in our boiler wall. You could create this and then send it to your colleague if it's an area that we're interested in do further. To kind of help us facilitate that conversation. So that's the redline tool. That's under editing? That's going to be under redlining.
You have to have certain authority to do that?
So anyone can create a redline.
I think you're I'm just trying to add something yesterday.
Is this for redlining or for editing?
Well, I got the edit with you this morning, but now I'm trying to add the parking for that. And
Yeah. So for our construction layer, that's actually a bit different. That's going to be under the editing tool. Let me go ahead and close this step line. So then for our construction projects and for select data layers, we actually have given people the opportunity to edit their own data within the map. And so for that, you have to have, you have 30 regular cleaners to have access to that feature.
but do you need to have all that access?
For the construction data layer. And so for that, they can actually add their own, I'll just go ahead and turn it back on. Construction project. So for example, if the PM wanted to go in and edit, for example, the building renovation here, they can click on that project. buildings and the construction boundaries as well. Just gonna go to the construction boundary tab here. And you'll see that I've highlighted 2 different construction areas. Let me just put up one more second. There's 2 different construction boundaries. And as the user, I can go in and I can edit these attributes for the construction project. Client will configure the knowledge and you're going to information. It should update it within the system, or I can go ahead and add a whole new construction project with associated attributes. And so this is great because typically what we were doing before is we had the construction project map. That was updated once every 3 months. People would have to wait to get the updates. But now people can go in any time and see the most up-to-date data. This is great.
Construction boundary, how's that?
This one here? Absolutely. So what you would do is go into, and from here I would do edit feature geometry. And I could refit that area.
But what I want to do is, add some fencing around the current project. So would it make the parking boxes bigger, or would I do another? Like future?
Or if that was to highlight your laydown, you can specify that as a whole different project and call it out as a laydown. That would be,
Fencing. Kind of like a outline. Okay, thank you. That's what I,
It's not really, you're really changing the shape of the,
that's what I wanted to clarify.
it's not a line around something, it's the shape.
So I
It's
am
the real boundary.
Yeah.
In the instance that you have, obviously, the whole thing would be the boundary of the project. So anytime you take a construction project, it really is, what's the impact zone? Where does that begin?
Right.
Okay, because the boundary was there before, and now there's not.
Okay, you need to change your project boundary, because like inside, people can't get beyond that. That's really what,
Yeah.
what's the problem.
Okay.
zoom out a bit. And now that we have this data, if we want to show this to other people, there's a couple different ways we can do that. One is the share button, one is the subscribe button. So first I'm going to show you share. So for example, if this was the image that you were interested in showing to your colleagues, you can click share. What that'll do is that'll open your email client. You can type in an email address as well as a subject and a message. And that will paste the image into the email body, and this is what they're going to see here. Which is nice because it's really quick, just a couple clicks it's on its way. One thing to take into consideration with this method is that the projects here, for example, they're all color-coded differently, and there's nothing telling the user what they're looking at. So they wouldn't understand the different color distinctions. That purple is the Department of Project Management, for example. So just take your end user into account and think of what they're going to be able to get out of the map that you're sending them. So if you did want to send them a map that had a legend and that clearly stated what everything is, you would do that by hitting the print button. And what this is going to do is it's going to print to a PDF. So you can actually save the PDF to your computer, print out later, or you can send it out as an attachment to your user. So that's going to do it. Say, you can also title your map, also your construction project proposal. You can specify the paper size of your PDF, if it's portrait or landscape orientation. You can also specify the width of your legend onto the paper, as well as the map scale. And what the map scale does is, so you can actually pull down and say how close I want this map to get, And what the system does is try to best guess for you automatically what scale you're gonna want based on where you're at within the map view. Another thing to take into account, as you can see, is that once you have a lot of data on your map, it does take a little while for the PDF to generate visuals. Yeah. So here we can clearly see what departments are there, as well as what other data layers are turned on. And it has a nice scale. And from here we could save the PDF and attach it as an email attachment, or we can just print directly from here. So I'm just sharing some maps. We went through all of this rather quickly, so now I'm going to open it up to questions.
Is there any way to add notes, like, maybe this one,
That's a great question. So the question is if there's any way to add annotation. So you could, absolutely, with redlining, you could add text that way.
Also annotate on the PDF.
that I know how to do, I can go in here and see, annotation, email button, notes in there.
So, for example, let's just open this one again. This is one of my redline writers. I'm going to click here. So if we were to add a point, for example. Not called main clause. Then you were to add that here. You could obviously make that text much more detailed, and then send that out with your, either your share button or the PDF. I believe that would be the way to do it.
But just, say, Audrey, you were telling us about the
I said that.
Exactly. So, and it was somewhere in the arboretum. Could he go in there, or Amy go in there and zoom in and point and say, you know,
Absolutely.
and then print the whole thing out, and it's got the writing there, it's got the oral reading, you do all that.
Absolutely.
Or conferences.
They'll be that.
Absolutely.
That's the thing, rather than, there's no way to search on road names or placing or throwing road.
At this time, we don't have, place names searchable. We do have street addresses searchable for buildings. But for the street addresses, just the streets themselves, we don't have that searchable.
Yes, that's very awkward, kind of.
Awkwardness is supposed to be more on the long stretch. So even if you search for it, it's laid on the map. Typically what buildings is in the map. Like if you search for campus drive, it's going to be the entire campus, and you won't know where to. So functionally, you're trying to do, next, so what is it that we're going to be?
Well, something like kind of first instance, for example, like the Swain Mall, you know, you hit the next button, you know, wherever the Swain shows up on the map. I think I said, or Jordan Grove, if I said Jordan, I don't know where that was, I could query on it, you know, so.
I think there are places, there's lots of places on campus, but there are a number of places that are in registrar's office that you can book. Or have an event, or that they're actual, no, not, I mean, the outdoor places. It's nice to have those places on here, because those are reservable, bookable, you know, looking at them, they also then take pages between them, and all that stuff. But rather than every single place we've named, we ones that are, you know, in the register, reservable places, they're kind of, that's like Norman Road.
Like, so a lot of times I'll take a season out of the zone map, and in Acrobat, you can do a find. You can do that kind of functionality, the same way Acrobat does. Find next, even if it's multiple.
And on the register of office, is there a contact?
I don't know how, like, when you gotta reserve an event, there's some, you know, sue myself. I don't know.
We'll try to find out who
Yeah.
has that information.
I'm trying to remember which map it is, it's got a lot of auditoriums.
I know when we've been to new major space, sometimes we've been notified of registrar office, the space is now available. So, definitely happens, and then some departments keep their spaces just for their group, but there are some big public ones.
Even outdoor space?
Especially that's what I'm talking about.
R25.
I've never, reserved them, I just kind of respond to people who are trying to.
I think so, yeah.
So the question is, what's the geographic area that's gonna be all? So the map will end right up.
So what about that whole feature like Google has, where they show pictures of parts of, you know, is that something we're gonna eventually do, or never, or?
So, I changed it here, yeah.
Yes, we do.
So if you click that here, and then tell it to go in. It'll take you to the location. On the basement? The Google Street View, yes.
Some of that's kind of old.
Sorry?
Some of that's old, like one of, you know, the Stanford State one. What's very together?
And, again, everything's gonna be available on the Tech Hub website. And if you have any questions, please feel free to